Okay, folks, welcome to another SSE show. Tonight's going to be an interesting one. Everybody has heard about ESPN's 30 for 30. Tonight we have one of the directors on, the one that produced Brian and the Boz. Everybody remembers Brian Bosworth, one of the most talked about athletes in the 1980s. Everybody was a show me athlete now, but back then that was very uncommon. How did you think about creating this, and how fun was it creating this documentary?
Well, I mean, when it first started, I didn't really want to, in a way, because I was first when they reached out to me, these guys in Oklahoma, they were just looking for advice, and my thought as they were asking me for advice is like, I don't even know if I want to see a movie about the Boz. Then 1 week later, they asked me to direct, and I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do here, because I felt I was one of those guys that the Boz lost. That I just thought he was this loudmouth jerk who probably did too much steroids and alienated all these people and then got blown up on national TV by Bojack. What more is there to know? But then I got to meet Brian, and the fascinating thing is that at that same time that the Boz lost me and other fans, Brian lost himself. The Boz lost Brian, and Brian was stuck in this sort of stasis then for 20, 25 years, because in the public eye, this storm had moved through his life of the Boz and had left him sort of with the wreckage. He created this character so he could go out on the field and perform the way that he needed to play, and then live a life without consequence off the field. But Brian was a guy who felt things deeply and had a fear about how he was going to perform on the field and how he performed in life. And now all he has is this, again, wreckage that he has to live with. And everybody wants the Boz, everybody wants the jerk, even after his career is over. And so as he's trying to rectify what the Boz did and trying to find Brian, anytime he's out in public or anytime he's doing something new, everybody wants the Boz. And so here I was, 3 years ago, meeting a man who his father had recently passed away, and he had just a few years back had gone through a divorce from his childhood sweetheart, and he was trying to find Brian, and I became fascinated in that. And so over the course of the next few years, as we got things going, and then the timing worked out with ESPN, we made something that I'm really, really proud of. And I think that, it takes a lot of courage for Brian to do what he did in the film, which is, to bare his soul and to go through this emotional journey in front of us, which is, it's quite a shocking thing, I think, for somebody who was so publicly this surface entity, this all show, to have this really introspective center, and then allow us to be inside with him. So it was a true honor.
For everyone watching tonight, this is Thaddeus Matula, who has created great films. You also did Pony Excess. We'll talk about that in a minute. Film documentary. So I want to introduce you to everybody on the show right now. We have Kempton all the way from Canada. Hello, Kempton. We have Robert. Robert, where are you from?
Currently residing in Connecticut. I'm from New Jersey originally.
Keith Knox is tweeting about the show, and I'm Chris Yates. I really appreciate you coming on. I just like diving into it right away, so that's why we jumped right into it. I should have probably given you the accolades that you deserve. You're a film director. You've done great documentaries. Where would you rank this one? How do you compare him as a character, as someone that you've interviewed in the past, and what did you think about overall meeting him?
Well, I mean, I think that this film is my best work to date, and really because what I want to do is with each film make it my best film to date, because you are allowed to get present with the material. And if I sat there and said, hey, I have this awesome opportunity to do a film about the Boz, who is this great, huge character, and it will propel my career because, he was a big character, so really, who cares how it turns out? That's a recipe for failure. And so I take it extremely, it is such a joy to get to do what I do, but it's also, I have a responsibility when I am entertaining. You guys give me an hour and a half or 2 hours of your time, and how cool is that? Because if you're a filmmaker, you can have a direct conversation with each person that is watching the film. With each and every person, they will have their own little interaction. And if you haven't given every single thing you can to each moment, then, why are you doing this job? And I said early on I lived in Denmark when I was a kid. And in Denmark, the name Heimlich is a name on a list. Who knows what he was? Who cares? We might have all these preconceived notions. He might be a jerk. He might be a flake. He might be a phony. He might be this. He might be that. He might be a great guy. Whatever he is, we can make a great film about Brian Bosworth. And amazingly, he let us in. It's a great journey. And I personally, it mirrored some stuff that was going on with me. Pony Excess was a huge success, but I didn't feel like I deserved the accolades that came with it. I felt that if anything, I had gotten in my way of doing the work, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I think that in doing this film, a lot of me is in it because I just committed myself to the actual doing of the thing.
And they keep saying Brian and the Boz. There really are two people, Brian Bosworth and the Boz. I kept hearing that. That seemed like the theme throughout the documentary. Two different types of people. Who did you really get to know? Was there? It seemed like he became more the Bosworth, Brian Bosworth, when you were doing the documentary because he was more remorseful, more nice. But did you see the Boz as well?
Yeah, early on, I saw the Boz a couple times. Like if I would go out to the bar with him, you get him a couple drinks and he'd turn into the Boz. But the thing is that what we found in here was something different than what he thought Brian was and what everybody thought the Boz was, and it was a great time to be a fly on the wall in the life of Brian Bosworth. Because what he's really trying to do, and he's a work in progress, is to both be able to rectify and understand that the things that he did as the Boz, good or bad, he still did them, and that it is okay to enjoy the good and also accept responsibility for the bad in order to be in the present and just being okay with being himself. Awesome. Whether people call him Brian or the Boz.
All right, so if anybody has a question that's watching on YouTube, just use the hashtag SSE Show Ask a Question. I know, Robert, you've got a question here live on the show. Go ahead.
Thaddeus, thanks for joining the show. I'd be interested in just hearing what the process is like. I tune in and watch the 30 for 30, and I don't really have any recollection of how it actually comes together. But it sounded like you were alluding to this actually being a couple years in the works. I'd love to hear exactly how something like this came together.
Well, it's a team, and I was contacted by a guy by the name of Parker Douglas, Oklahoma fan, grew up in Oklahoma. He he owned a T-shirt company, and through that he had good relations with Brian Bosworth, Barry Switzer, and the University of Oklahoma. Younger guy, and he had seen Pony Excess, and he liked Pony Excess, and he knew through his dealings that one of his friends, Adam Walterscheid, had been a kicker at SMU. And so he reaches out to Adam Walterscheid, and I get a call from Parker. And like I said, just, hey, you know, we've got Brian, we've got Barry Switzer, we've got the University of Oklahoma, and I just want some advice. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then a week later, do you want to direct? And yeah.
Just like that easy.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's easy. But you know, then lots of struggle, lots of time, lots of whatnot.
How long did that take to put together? Start from filming to editing.
Well, it's been more than 3 years since that first phone call, and then the interviews. There's some interviews in there that we did back in the day. So there's some interviews in there that are 2.5 years old.
Wow.
And it's just one of those things that it's all about timing and just being okay with, I'm not going to force this issue because there are opportunities for this to happen. And I understood from these guys contacting me in the first place that they, you know, were interested in having this on ESPN. That's the reason why they were calling me, and I had to then assure their money guy that look, this kind of thing is not going to make you any money, and if ESPN wants to be involved in this, they want to be involved from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we can take a shot and go out and shoot some interviews, but there really isn't any better place for this project than ESPN. So, you know, lots of different things happened, but it was all, I think it all, no, I know it all happened on the correct timing because once we were finally able to do this and do this with ESPN, and there's a lot of ESPN in this in the sense of supporting a filmmaker and saying, hey, we want you to be able to tell your story. And so so when I say there's a lot of ESPN in this, it's kind of counterintuitive because you'd think that they were going to like control, but they wanted to make sure that I was able, and all their directors are able to tell the story that they want to tell without the constraints of how is the market going to react to this. We're going to give you this
freedom.
Yeah, and so this all happened then at a time by then Brian was in this transitional period, a moment where he's moved to Austin now, and
he hated Austin. He puked on Austin.
Well, he had never actually been here. He had found out that I lived in Austin. They were going to fly to meet with him and his then fiance and get him, you know, to meet me and okay me as the director. When they found out that this Austin filmmaker was flying out, they were like, well, you know, fly us to Austin. So that turned out well, I guess, because we had dinner one night, and now just 3 years later we had a film come out on ESPN. But you know, they stayed a few extra days, saw the town, and I mean, how can you not love Austin? I find very few people who
yeah, it's a great town.
Yeah, and anyway, so a few months later they were married. Within a year they were living down here, and so all of this kind of conspired into a time where we could show this emotionally vulnerable, yet he had a strength in him that he didn't have 3 years ago when we first started this.
Okay. All right, we got a question all the way from Canada. Kempton, I know that you love filmmaking, so what is your question?
Yeah, my question is, do you find it difficult to establish trust with Boss? Like, did you gain trust from him? it's kind of a slow process, and are there areas that he doesn't want you to touch on at all, but then later on open up or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the most important thing is to listen. And when you actually sit down and you listen to somebody as they're talking about whatever, and you pay attention and use context clues. I mean, this sounds like, this is a playbook, really, how to win friends and influence people. But listen, ask them about themselves, and just let them know that you are there to just be a sounding board. And yeah, so then there's also, if you're thrown into a situation where you're just going to be interviewing somebody, you don't always have the time to make that, is it cool that we talk about this kind of connection? So sometimes you will have to maybe offend people as you get a little bit closer to a subject. But I think that Brian, whether he trusted me or not, and that was a question throughout. Who knows? He decided that he was going to trust me because he really wanted to go on this journey, and he didn't want to see the film. 2 days before it premiered in New York, he finally saw it, and I mean, I rarely got any contact from Brian unless we were shooting. 2 days, he sees, I get a text, and it simply says, "I'm glad I went on this journey with you," and that, I mean,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's a cool feeling.
Yeah, he just tweeted us tonight saying good luck on the Hangout. He favorited our Hangout.
All right,
that's pretty cool. So I like that. I find it interesting. It's funny you say about listening. Being a sportscaster reporter as well. My wife always says this, and that's a funny deal. She always says, "How do you get these great interviews?" I said, "Honey, I listen." She goes, "You never listen at home." I'm like, "Well, get a camera in the house. I'll listen all night long." But it is one of those deals that you really do have to pay attention because you're there to focus on them. It's not about you. So listening to these stories and hearing them, because quite frankly, I'm behind the scenes as far as knowing about Bosworth, seeing him through the years, and I just thought that guy's a fool, an idiot. But seeing the story, he really was a marketing genius. He was a smart guy, and he knew how to, and he played pretty darn good football. So combining all those three things, what really impressed you about him?
Well, he played great football, and he, everybody. It was like everybody has these talking points on Brian Bosworth. They'll tell you, "Hey, he's actually a really smart guy." Then you get to meet him, and you're like, "Yeah, you know what? He's actually a really smart guy." He didn't want to take credit for the marketing genius aspect, because also, if he took credit for that, then he'd also have to take credit for what a jerk he was, and so it was this back and forth and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, he graduated early from Oklahoma, and I know he went to Texas, so you can make jokes about the education level. Still, you graduate early with a 0.6 GPA from a large state institution. You're no dummy.
Right.
And he was able to capitalize on a moment which was right for exactly what he was getting. And I remember there was a fantastic story told in the film. Rusty Hilger, the quarterback at Oklahoma State, talks about how Brian was able to call out the play.
I remember that part.
Yeah, it was the first time they were playing. And Brian told this story about how when he got to Oklahoma, he knew that the guy in front of him was really smart. And he knew that the linebacker coach was really, really smart. And he knew that he had this sort of ability to turn off pain and go, go, go. But the way that he was going to get the job was by being smarter than the guy in front of him. And he's like, well, that's almost impossible. So how am I going to get smarter than him? I've got to be smarter than the coach. How's that going to happen? So he goes in and he's studying with the coach every day, and he knows every single play, every single spot where each person of the defense has to be on. But even that's not enough. He's got to understand each of these offenses that they're playing So he got to the point where he would look at the offenses as they were coming up and just be able to tell and know at this point on the field, there's a 20% chance of this happening. There's a 30% chance of this happening. Oh, they moved into this situation. There's one of two things that they can be doing. And he's explaining to this. We're out at dinner in Norman, and he's explaining this, and he says, you know, it was just I just saw it. It was just easy for me, like calculus.
Wow.
Brian, calculus isn't.
He thinks he was smart, but he still took it to another level. Back then, I mean, everybody knows about athletes nowadays. They're all the same. It's all social media. They're all, you know, look at me, look at me, look. But no one was really doing that. He was really ahead of the curve a little bit on that.
He was, but also when we started to go back and look at all this footage, and it's like, where's the jerk we all remember? You know, and it's not like he was saying just hugely explosive, incendiary things.
Yeah, so right now he would probably be normal.
Right, he was just saying what was funny in the locker room, and he had the guts to come out and say it, you know, on a microphone, and it's like, wow, this is just fun and funny, and I think that's also what worked for him. I mean, he would play the villain, but he wouldn't, you know, he'd also play with a little bit of a smile. And
but my point is, these guys are doing that right now. When you hear his interview, he would probably be just a normal athlete right now. He wouldn't be this crazy guy, because most of them are like that now.
Yeah, he was the first. He was the birth of the modern athlete. And that is what makes him a fascinating character, because he created.
Great point. Love that.
He created this larger-than-life, huge figure that has been over and over again copied and refined. I mean, in fact, The Rock came out and said he loved the movie, and you got to know that The Rock created this image with the Boz in mind. But here's the thing: it's like he creates this huge character, but with this high cost to himself. He loses Brian in the process. And if you look at somebody like LeBron James, who had this big public, the decision, you know, I'm taking the South Beach. The public consensus turned on him. I mean, this guy only did one thing wrong in his public career. I mean, maybe there was something else minor, but always he's just a nice, likable guy. And here he was. He wanted to have fun with his friends and win a championship. And he's like, what, 20, 21 when he says that. And then he goes down. He goes to South Beach. He has a great time, wins a few championships, but realizes how much he had damaged the public perception of him. And here in the public eye, he was able to do something to heal that and go back to Ohio and mend those fences. And Brian was never able to do that. And because Brian had once been this insecure kid, afraid, he didn't ever know how to get back and be able to rectify the mistakes of his past. But really what it was, it's just understanding that they weren't mistakes. It's just what he did, you know, and good or bad, it's what he did.
Okay, and we have another question coming up, but I want to follow up on that when you say you rectified. It seemed like in the film that he kind of did at the end of it, unless that was, I don't want to say staged, but you don't ever want to say staged. It seemed like it did, though, that he kind of rectified with Oklahoma a little bit.
Yeah, he has. I mean, he's welcomed back there, and he goes to all the games, and it was, you know, he didn't go back to the games until he moved back here to Texas, until he moved to Austin. He had been living out in California, and it was just kind of like this thing where he decided he was going to show up, and good or bad, he, you know, that's what happened, and
they're receptive to it, which is impressive.
Yeah, and I think what we were able to find is that I think that a lot of people had forgiven him long before he had forgiven himself, and so he was bringing all this baggage with him, rather than it waiting for him there. Yes, there were people that still were not happy with him, and that's what he would focus on, and not the fact that people just wanted him around. And now he's a great fan. I mean, we had a lot of fun going to that game with Brian, and I mean, he's cheering like he's on the team. It's fun, and yes, there is that reconciliation. And
we only got a few more questions. I know our time is almost up. We want to be respectful of your time. We'll go back to the guest here again one more time. Kempton, you get your one last question, and then Hanlon if you want one, and Jason as well, and Knox. So let's start with Kempton. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you said the documentary you took 3 years. Did you plan in the beginning to take 3 years, or was it or why 3 years? That's a long time, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't set out to do this and have it be 3 years. I mean, but I will say from beginning to end, Pony Excess was 18 months, and that was incredibly quick, incredibly quick. And I mean, that's from the time I said I'm doing this till the time it showed on ESPN was 18 months, and I was no one before that. I mean, I was me, but I mean, I didn't. People weren't calling me to be on their radio show or on their Google Hangouts. But really, what it was just like letting the timing work out for itself and not forcing things into submission. But yeah, you don't set out to have it be 3 years. And really, it took that time to get a team together. And I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't just say a big thank you to Parker Douglas, who brought me in on this. His partner Peter Rollinson, great guy. Wallace Marsh, fantastic OU supporter. And then I got hooked up with this great team here in Austin, Texas Crew Productions, and I was able to sleep in my own bed for most of the nights that we were making this, even though I did have to spend some nights in Norman, which I really struggled to find a nice hotel in Norman. And by the end, we finally found one, and it's like, why weren't we staying here all the time?
You just stayed at Switzer's house.
Right. We actually filmed the Brian interview and the Barry Switzer interview. Yeah. And the Spencer Tillman interview, all in his house. Those were all 2.5 years ago, actually, because I knew at that time that Brian was in this transitional period where he wouldn't know, or I could feel that he didn't know what was going on. And with the luck of time, by the time we got to filming again and doing this stuff, he was able to have these really cool moments with his son, because it's really, beyond being the story of the creation of the modern athlete, it's the story of the father and son, and that closure that he never had with his dad.
Right.
And hopefully is having with his son, and then with his father figure, Barry Switzer.
Barry Switzer. And Switzer, by the way, you're in good company. Switzer has been on our Google Hangout as well.
Yeah, pitching his wine, right?
He was awesome. He was great. Yeah. Jason, do you have a question, Jason?
Yeah, sure. Thaddeus, tell us what's next. I mean, 2-time ESPN director, 2-time Peabody winner. What's
that
next?
Was supposed to be my last question, but
my bad.
I know. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Well, hey, you both can ask. There's
great question, Jason.
There are more sports documentaries on the horizon. It's passion of mine. I'm returning to narrative filmmaking with a scripted film. I'll be doing a feature version of The Dreamer, a short film I did in college. But right now, I am doing Live City. Live City is a film about Austin, and it's sort of coming of age as a city, as seen through the eyes of its music community. My feeling is that. Well, first of all, Pony Excess I felt like was a great story about Dallas in its heyday. And now that I've lived here in Austin for 9 years, I realized that Austin is both in its heyday and at a crossroads. What better time to turn a camera on it as to seeing this one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. A city that's defined by its music. I mean, I don't feel. It's a stretch to say that before the music happened 40, 50 years ago, this was a sleepy college town, government town.
Yeah.
And then the music happened, and this spirit of togetherness, come be here, and let's make music together, or let's make tech together, let's make art together. That has infused this town, And so right now we have an Indiegogo going because I wanted to find a way to share that experience. It's so cool. I got to tell you, it's so cool when you get to see a movie on screen and you're like, man, I had something to do with that. And I wanted to find a way to share that. And you know, crowdfunding, what a cool tool, because it's not about the money. Yes, the money's cool because it helps us create a better final product. But you know, the ability to hear from all these people and to be a part and share this experience of filmmaking, because I got to tell you, this is an incredible gift. It is awesome to do what I get to do. And I love sharing it with everybody. So
that's awesome. I love your passion, man. That's the way to do it. I want to make sure everyone gets their last question in. I know we're going overtime a little bit here. Robert, you get one more, and Knox, you get one more. Robert, go ahead.
Great. All right. So my question is, what's the most satisfying part of putting this together? Is it, you know, being in the trenches, you know, kind of getting things going? Is it, you know, in the end when everything comes together and you're sharing the story? You know, what's your favorite part of putting films together?
It's usually in the edit bay. I mean, I gotta say that, like, sitting down, my editor on this film, Christos Pathiakis, what a name, huh? It's so much fun to see it on TV, but then for me to be immediately brought back into that edit bay and those late nights of just eating whatever we could find in the studio and just be, this works, you know, like we're going to make this point and it's going to go into this point and it's going to go into this point and it's going to blow people's minds, hopefully. Some days you get in the next day and like, what were we thinking? But in those trenches, I mean, those are the most fun. I mean, it's an old saying in the film business that a film is made in the edit bay. But I mean, it's just such a cool experience. But yeah, I mean, also, I mean, how can you discount then also being able to go out and interview these childhood icons? And
yeah,
I mean, to go to an Oklahoma football game and be on the field with Brian Bosworth, that is pretty cool. You know, I mean, that is just like check mark.
Knox, you get to wrap this up, and then I'll close it. Go ahead.
Perfect. So, hey, great evening hearing about it. Let's take a step back. I've got two creative kids that are younger in age. You know, when Yates hangs out with them, he gives them advice. You've got a little different creative angle and flair with how you do things. So what advice do you have for you know, an 8th grader who's interested in film and interested in photography and interested in finding those stories? What drove you to where you're going, and what would you tell, you know, my kids?
Be where your feet are and bring a camera, because what is so amazing is that this life, it has so many beautiful things to see if you just stop and look. Mm-hmm. And if you understand that my life is not about what I'm doing a year from now, because anything that you're doing in the future, it's a fiction. All that you have is right now, and right now is perfect and beautiful. And if you want to be a visual storyteller, just open your eyes. Open your eyes and say, what am I seeing right now? And then, as you engage yourself in the present, understand that when you say, this is a story that I want to tell, and you feel that, you follow that. And you try to figure out what it is inside you that makes this story that now you have to tell visually, what it is, why you have to be the one to tell it. And even if you can't answer that question, you're going to answer it by continuing to ask it. And so for creative kids or anybody, just do what you're doing and enjoy it. And for the parents out there, trust me, just tell your kids that they are awesome, but also really engage with them and don't sugarcoat it as they start to really get into their passion. You know, because you want them to understand that if they come to you and say, hey, what do you really think of this? That you're gonna give them constructive criticism because you love them, and they will then learn, either how to shut out the critics or
Yeah.
or how to understand that when we tell stories not for ourselves. We tell stories for the audience, and each one of you are my boss, but each one of you are also my best friend. And there is such a beautiful thing to say, hey, I trust you with this.
That was a great close. I love that. I love that. Live in the present, and that really your audience is really your boss, because at the end of the day, if the viewer doesn't like it, you don't have a job. So great stuff. Great documentaries. We look forward to your future work, and congrats with all your success, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Live City, get on Indiegogo. Contribute now. Contribute now.
Help them out, folks.
Yes, and there will be something with Brian Bosworth in the near future. I also heard from Eric Dickerson. We might have some sort of perk with Eric Dickerson. So he liked the buzz. He reached out and said, hey, great job.
Sweet. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Real pleasure.